A couple of stations in Michigan.
The first Stevensville Cubs and Scout Pack was given an inside look at amateur radio recently. The lesson was organized by some dedicated community members who see a value in getting more of today's youth involved in the hobby.
Well, the idea behind all of this was that we would give the children an experience with amateur radio to make them aware that the hobby exists. Because when I was their age, amateur radio was a major hobby. A lot of people experimented. They were interested in advancing radio. But of course, these days with the internet and all the other things that children have access to, there's not the same interest in amateur radio. But the reality is that we still need people who are interested in radio.
Gebhard has been an amateur radio operator for close to 50 years. His father was a radio engineer, and Phil and his brother both ended up pursuing the hobby.
We lived at the radio station at the transmitter site, so I was exposed to it all the time. So I had an advantage because my father had the experience and the knowledge, and because I was exposed to it, it was a natural thing for me to get interested.
Phil has helped many in the area study and get licensed as amateur radio operators. There's also a club in Niagara for anyone that's interested in getting into the hobby.
When I developed an interest in amateur radio, it was the place where potential engineers would get their start. So they got involved with amateur radio, and then from there they would go to university, get a degree in engineering, and these are the people who ended up in places like NASA, or in Canada, the Canadian Space Agency, or the National Research Council. And today, we're in a slightly different position, and it would be nice to get more girls and women involved in science and engineering. So, and amateur radio would be a good way to do that.
During the 2-hour session, participants used Echolink to contact stations using the internet, built a radio transmitter, and conversed with other ham radio operators.
So we're trying to give them a good introduction to amateur radio. We talked to a station in Cape Cod, and it's a Marconi station. Then we talked to a fellow in Long Island, and the other fellow who was involved in the conversation was in Maryland. And they were having a conversation, and we jumped in, and they were willing to talk to the students and the scouts and give them a pleasant introduction to amateur radio. And it meant that the scouts got a chance to talk on the radio.
What was the response from the kids today?
I think they were thrilled. They were excited that they could actually hear somebody from some other part of the world, and that they could actually speak to this person.
Those that participated today will get a leg up in their pursuit of a communications badge. Meanwhile, Phil plans to continue mentoring anyone who's interested in amateur radio. In Niagara, you're watching The Source.